questions. God speaks for himself, which means God reveals to people or God receives revelation. God reveals to prophets. God doesn't receive revelation. Well, Jesus said, whatsoever I ever heard from him, these things I speak. I don't say except what in huwa illa wahyu yuha. Like all prophets, they don't speak out of their own selves. What they receive, they tell. That's it. That's what Jesus is saying. This is not the tone of a God speaking. We're not using the Quran. We're not using the Barnabas gospel, which Christians don't even recognize at all. We're using the Bible, which exists in the hands of the Christians today, showing them that Jesus is not God. He's saying, I'm not God here. God prays, or people pray to God? Here, Jesus is praying in the Bible, my God, my God. Of course, it doesn't mean myself, myself. He says, my God, why have you forsaken me? All of these arguments were used by Arius 2,000 years ago. Now there are very influential bishops in the Roman Empire who became Arian. Auxentius, the bishop of Milan in Rome. Eusebius, the bishop of Nicomedia. Actually, we cannot say that he's Arian, because Eusebius of Nicomedia was actually a colleague of Arius, learning in the same school in Antioch under Lucian. So saying Arian is a word that Arians didn't really like. They are colleagues of Arius. It was used by their enemies to show that they are Arians, which means they are the followers of Arius. We're Christians, the followers of Christ. So it was used to demonize them. That's why the Arians did not like the word Arians, because they are not Arians. They are just submitters, Muslims. Okay? Ulfilas, this is a very important person. He's the Arian of Dacia. Dacia, which is today in Romania. And I'll tell you why later on. He's a very important person. Constantine the Great. Of course, when you ask Christians, do you consider Arians to be Christians? They'll say, no, they are heretics. That's a cult. Why? Because they don't believe in the divinity of Jesus, and they don't believe in the Trinity, so they are not Christians. Ask a Christian, who is the first Christian emperor? They will say, Constantine the Great. Excuse me? All the books of history say that Constantine the Great died as an Arian. Why this time you consider him a Christian? Constantine the Great was baptized by Bishop Eusebius of Nicomedia 1 year before he died. Actually, less than 1 year. It is said that about 3 months before his death. Okay? And he said, creed which was based not on conviction but on votes could not be taken seriously. One could believe in God but could not elect him by democratic method. We need to know that after his death, his sons ruled. His son Constantius, this one, ruled the Eastern Empire from 337 till 350. And then the other son, who was ruling the western part, Constans, okay, was actually sympathizing with the Trinitarians. Died in the year sympathizing with the Trinitarians. Died in the year 350. So Constantius became the emperor of the whole empire, the sole emperor. This means that most of the Roman Empire was ruled by Arians until 350, and then up to 360 or 61, also all of it was ruled by Arians. This means that we're speaking about a about 25 years when the Roman Empire was a Muslim empire that believes that there is no God except one God, Jesus is the messenger of God. Arian empire that rejected the divinity of Jesus, rejected the Trinity. If you go to the Oxford Encyclopedia, or in the English dictionary, which is which was printed in Oxford, and you open the word Arianism to check it, it explains to you, Arianism is the principal heresy denying the divinity of Jesus. Named after its author Arius, Arianism maintained that the Son of God was not eternal, but was created by the Father from nothing as an instrument for the creation of the world. The Son was therefore not co-eternal with the Father, nor of the same substance. The heresy was condemned by the Council of Nicaea in the year 325, and again at Constantinople in 381, which means between 337, when Constantine became Arian, until 381, when Theodosius, the first Trinitarian emperor, started to rule. During all this time, either Arianism was dominating the Roman Empire, or at least Arians were free to worship as Muslims normally. The Catholic Encyclopedia speaks about something very important, speaks about Ulfilas. You remember the three bishops? I told you Ulfilas is a very important one. Why? Because this man was sent in the year 341 to evangelize the Germanic tribes, or the Teutonic tribes. We are talking about the tribes that today constitute the roots of Germany, Netherlands, France, Spain, most of northern Italy, and all of these areas. Maybe you can say also about half the UK. Those are Germanic tribes. The Germanic tribes, I'll show you now here, the Germanic tribes were called later by the Romans the barbarians, because they are not Romans, and because they are not Trinitarians. They were Unitarians. They rejected the divinity of Jesus and the Trinity. So there were a lot of wars, actually, a lot of battles between the barbarians who don't believe in the Trinity and the Romans who believe in the Trinity. These are the tribes. Eunomians in what's today Turkey. The Vandals, I'll speak about them later. Burgundians in this area in the Balkans. The Visigoth, which means the Western Goth, القوط الغربيين, okay, in Spain and France. The Ostrogoth, Eastern Goth, القوط الشرقيين, okay, in this area of Germany and northern Italy. The Lombards and the Burgundians. The Vandals are actually a Germanic tribe that descended from Spain, and they made an empire in North Africa. And they fought the Roman Byzantines. And they won. And then they were defeated. Okay? That's why when you go to Algeria and Tunisia, and you meet some of the Berbers, they look German. They're blonde and they have blue eyes and green eyes, okay? Because they are Germanic tribes. For your own information, when the Muslims came to to this area by at the time of Uqba ibn Nafi'. Within 10 years, the Berbers constituted 75% of the Muslim army. And the leader of the army was also Berber, Tariq ibn Ziyad. He was not Arab. And the first thing they did is they conquered Spain. Why Spain? Because Spain is the last Aryan state. Spain was an Aryan state in the year 586. It became Catholic. When its king, Ricardo, he converted to Catholicism and he banned Arianism and he started to persecute and oppress the Arians. So what happened is that those people went out rescuing the people of Spain. And actually, this is something that you need to understand about the Futuhat Islamiyya. Because in my book, Aqbat Muslimun, Qabla Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which means Muslim Copts before the birth of Prophet Muhammad, I proved that most of the Egyptians were Aryans. And I proved it from the books of the Orthodox Christian Church in Egypt, that they joined Amr ibn al-As army and they fought with him, the Roman Byzantines. And that was the case all over the empire. Anywhere where the Muslim army goes, no civil resistance. Why? Why there were no civil resistance? We were told that these peoples were Christians and the Romans are also Christians. So why aren't they fighting with them against Muslims? It's because simply this is the biggest lie. Most of the people here under the Roman Byzantine Empire were not Trinitarian Christians, which means we're not Christians. And many questions and you will never understand, you will never know the answer for if you don't understand Arianism. Because this is the untold history of the world. There are things in the seerah of Prophet Muhammad that you cannot understand if you don't understand Arianism. Like, for example, how come the king of Egypt, Al-Muqawqis, Kairos, who was the Catholic bishop at the same time, a Trinitarian, how come a Christian sends 2 Christian girls to be slave girls to someone he sees as a false prophet? How can a Christian send Christian to be slave girls? No one asked this. Simply because they were not Christians. Those were girls who are not Trinitarians. Muwahhideen. People who believe in Tawheed. So he sent them to be slave girls to the one who believes in Tawheed like them. Many things. For example, Al-Hudaybiyah Treaty. It has a lot of conditions that you can't imagine why did the Prophet accept it? If someone comes Muslim to us, we have to return him back to Quraysh. Even women. In the beginning, the treaty started like that. Even women, we have to surrender them back to the Quraysh. But if someone apostates from Islam and goes to Quraysh, Quraysh doesn't have to submit him back. It wasn't even fair. Many of the conditions are unfair. And we don't know why did the Prophet accept it. And we were told, because the Prophet is a man of peace and he wants peace, and Islam propagates at the time of peace. Where is the peace? If you read the seerah, as soon as the Prophet ﷺ signed the treaty, he sent 4 armies to the north. Mu'ata, Tabuk, Dawmat al-Jandal, that is Salasil. After Al-Hudaybiyah, it's not about peace, it's about a strategic decision, strategic plan, that there are things happening in the north that he cannot allow to continue, and he wanted truce in the southern front for 10 years at least, because he will go and fight the Romans. At that time, there were massacres in the Roman Empire for the Aryans. the number of Aryans that were killed, according to a British historian called DEPart2, exceeded 12 million. You can't imagine how bloody this period was. So these things, Muslims from the followers of Muhammad cannot sit and watch the Muslims from the followers of Jesus being slain like that. So they went out reaching for them. And that's what happened. When you read the books of history, you see people from these areas joining the armies, fighting with them against Christians like them. No, they were not Christians, simply. And I depended on mainly the books of the Trinitarian Orthodox Church of Egypt, so that no one can say there's a conflict of interest. Actually, Saint Jerome, who's actually the translator of the Bible from Greek to Latin, a very important figure in the Trinitarian Church, he said, this is in the year 400, he said, because he translated the Bible in the year 400, he said, the whole world groaned and marveled to find itself Aryan. He is annoyed by this. He's saying, what's this? Everywhere I go, I only find Aryans. Is the whole world becoming Aryan? So Arianism became the dominating, actually, creed among the people who were ruled by the Roman Empire, which was Trinitarian at that time. Because from the year 381, it became, the rulers became Trinitarian. And you can't imagine the massacres. Julian is called Julian the Apostate. Actually, he is an emperor who was a pagan. And during his time, because he gave religious freedom, during his time the Trinitarians became stronger and stronger, and then they jumped on the throne. But he said, no wild beasts are so hostile to man as Christian sects in general to one another, because of all the fights between the Christians. He is criticizing Christians here. Theodosius the Great, he's not actually great because he's the emperor who issued 15 laws against Aryans that they can be jailed just for finding a book of Arius in your house. You can get your head cut off, from jail up to execution, if you are found Aryan or hiding an Aryan or hiding an Aryan book. Okay? And many massacres, like 7,000 Aryans were killed in one massacre in Salonika. There is also a very famous massacre that was in the Balkans. It was it says that 15,000 were killed. And of course, these pictures are normally used by Christians to show that Roman pagans were doing this to them. While actually, many of these persecutions were by the Christians themselves to the other types of Christians, because they are not the right type of Christian. Okay? So it's not enough to be Christian, you have to be the right type of Christian. There people were thrown to beasts and so on. This is a very important book. It's called Tarikh Masr ليوحنا النقيوسي, the Chronicle of John, of the Bishop of Nikiu. This man, John, the Bishop of Nikiu. Nikiu is in North Egypt. It's a place called in Al-Munufiyya. Okay? Muhafzat Al-Munufiyya. And he was some people are Munufis here, huh? Okay. Munufiyya is where Hosni Mubarak came from, and Sadat, and John of Nikiu. Actually, he attended the Al-Fath. So he attended the conquest of Egypt by Amr ibn al-As. That's why his book is called by the Christian Church the most important book of history of the church, because he wrote things that he had seen himself. And in his book he wrote that Amr ibn al-As never looted or plundered or did any harm to the Orthodox Christians or anyone. He said that he never touched the churches. He said that he gave, he returned the bishop of the Orthodox to his see, because he was actually, he escaped for about 13 years in the desert from the Catholics. And he spoke very highly about Amr ibn al-As, and he said that the Orthodox were persecuted and tortured by the Arians, but not by the Muslims from the followers of Muhammad who came with Amr ibn al-As. Of course, in retaliation to what they also what happened to them. I'm not justifying what they did, but this means that the Muslims from the followers of Muhammad ﷺ who came with Amr ibn al-As were spoke about very highly by John the Bishop of Nicaea. And he said that the torture happened on the hands of the Egyptian Arians in retaliation, of course, to what happened to them for 300 years. Okay? And we shouldn't justify, of course, any torture, of course. Okay? So there was the era of martyrs, Asr al-Shuhada, which always the Egyptian Christians speak about, saying that Egyptian Christians, because they are Orthodox, they were always tortured by the Catholics, who are also Trinitarians like them, to change from Orthodox to Catholicism. And they mention nothing about Arians, as if Arians were not there. So the issue is, why do they say Arianism is the untold history of the world? Because it's a very sensitive issue. It's a very bloody period where they were killed like goats. And the problem is that the history is always written by the victorious. So the victorious writes himself Orthodox. Orthodox means Salafi. Orthodox means the one on the right creed. So the victorious writes himself Orthodox, and he writes the other one heretic. While the other one maybe is the real Orthodox and the other one is the heretic. So don't trust books of history so much. You always, when you read, you have to look for the conflict of interest. Who wrote about who? Yani even in the ilm al-hadith, if the narrator of the hadith belongs to a school of thought that this hadith is forcing one of its views, the hadith is not authentic yet until we find another narrator from another school of thought narrating the hadith, because there's a conflict of interest. The person may lie to reinforce one of his views. Okay? So it's very important to look at the conflict of interest when you are studying these things. So, how were the Aryans described by the Prophet ﷺ? The Prophet ﷺ never said that they are Aryans. He called them the true followers of Jesus Christ. He only said Aryans once, when he sent the letter to Heraclius telling him, أسلم تسلم يؤتيك الله أجرك مرتين فإن لم تسلم فعليك إثم الأريسيين. Submit to Allah so as to be saved. But if not, let know that you are responsible for the Aryans. Why did he use the word Aryans, which they hate? Because he is talking to Heraclius and he doesn't understand except that. So this is what Heraclius understands, Aryans and Trinitarians. But when the Prophet spoke about them to the Sahaba, he said, there will come times when you will be ruled by tyrants who will mislead you if you obey them and kill you if you disobey them. The companion said, oh, what do we do then, O Prophet of Allah? He said, be like the true followers of Jesus, son of Mary. They were cut with the saws and crucified on the wood, but that never made them compromise their religion. Dying as a believer is better than living as a disbeliever. Be like that. He didn't say Aryans, he said the true followers كونوا كأصحاب عيسى بن مريم. He didn't say Arians, Arisiyin, but he said Arisiyin to Heracles. Okay? Here, his letter to Heracles, which I mentioned to you. Okay? By the way, Prophet Muhammad had also the same letter to Cyrus, but he told him, if submit to Allah, you will be saved, but if not, then let know that you are responsible for the Copts, because the Copts, all the Copts were under oppression, were persecuted. Even the Orthodox Trinitarians were persecuted by the Catholics. Okay? Same thing, by the way, what he sent to Kisra in Persia. He said, let know that you are responsible for the Majus, the Magans. Everyone who was an unjust ruler received a letter like that. But the only one who received a more friendly letter was Negos, and Najashi in Abyssinia, because he was a just ruler. He was not persecuting people. He wasn't oppressing people. So his letter was different. In his letter, the Prophet said, I bear witness that Jesus, the Son of Mary, is the spirit belonging to Allah, and his word which he cast into the chaste and excellent Virgin Mary. She thus became pregnant by means of his spirit and his inspiration with Jesus in the same manner that he created Adam with his hand. Surely I invite you to Allah, the one who has no partners, and to friendship, continuity, and government in obedience to him. Thus I have delivered the message and given you counsel. Therefore accept my counsel, peace be upon he who follows the guidance. He didn't say, if you don't accept, we are holding you responsible, which means we will not let you continue what you're doing to them. But here the man is just, فَاسْمَعُوا نَصِيحَتِي فَاقْبَلُوا نَصِيحَتِي. If you don't accept, I give my advice. That's it. And those people who were unjust, armies went after them. Those people who were just, no record of any Muslim soldier ever been there. That's it. Modern Arians. After the Reconquista, which is kicking the Muslims and the Jews from Spain, when the Christians took over Spain, 50 years only after the Reconquista, this man appeared. Michael Servetos, a Spanish doctor, who wrote a book called The Two Dialogues of Trinity, and the other book is called The Errors of Trinity. He was tried by the Inquisitions and he was sentenced to death with his book around his waist until they become ashes, him and his book. So he had to escape in Europe, and he changed his name. In Geneva, he sent a message to Calvin. Calvin is the great theologian of Protestantism. And he said, look, let's get together as scholars and discuss theology. Calvin said, you're welcome. And then Calvin betrayed him, and he reported him to the police. So the Swiss police caught him on his way to Calvin's house. And that was, of course, this doesn't look good actually for Calvin to do so. And Calvin went to the judge and he said, if this man is executed, I will lose my reputation. He has to go out. The judge, looks like the judge was a Protestant. He told Calvin, look, go visit him in jail and tell him at the day of the trial in court, let him just reject everything and deny everything. I will release him. He went and he told him this in jail. And in the day of the court, Michael Servetos made a very strong speech, a very brave one, against Trinity and he said that Trinity is the a nightmare of Saint Augustine and a beast eating Christianity and so on. So the judge didn't find anything to do except to